The provider needs to have an agreement signed by the provider as well as the parent and dated that talks about what services are provided, the times of care, the fees, when fees are due, any extra services, and the parent signs off agreeing that they're going to review and update that file every 6 months.
We have forms specifically designed to help you set that up with the parents.
Everything on the agreement form is tied to a regulation. So you want them to fill it out completely. If there is something that doesn't apply, if there's a parent that's not involved, they can put NA or a line. If there's a parent that's not working, again, you don't have to put unemployed. We don't need to know that. We just need to know that the form is complete, and an NA or a line through it will indicate to us that it is complete. Full addresses. If they put 325 Walnut Street, the provider probably knows where that is, but we don't know where that is. So I always say, tell the parents, remember, my certification rep does not live around here.
There needs to be an emergency contact form or emergency contact information according to what's in the regulations. There's a lot of information that's considered part of that, so DHS has designed a form that a child care provider can go on the internet, download, and they can use that form as the emergency contact information because all that information is included.
There shouldn't be blank lines. It shouldn't just say emergency pickup is John Smith and no phone number, no address.
That's partly to ensure safety because then a provider can look at a driver's license and compare it with the address that's given to them on the emergency contact forms and provide an extra level of safety.
I was at one facility that they had to close. I believe the water was shut off, so they had to start calling parents to come pick up children. And there was at least a handful of children's parents they couldn't get a hold of because the numbers were disconnected. That's the purpose of it. In the event of an emergency, you need to get a hold of that parent.
And we also have a set of releases that we include on the bottom that gives the facility permission for first aid procedures as well as obtaining emergency medical care if it would be needed. A child's file also has to have health assessments, which vary in frequency according to the age group of the children. And that's one thing that's important for providers to note because an infant's health assessment needs to be renewed a lot more often than a school-ager's health assessment.
We have our own form, it's on the website, and I encourage providers to use those. I have seen more and more doctors updating their forms to include the statements that we require because the one that always we find that is missing from doctors' forms is has the child, do you believe that the child is suitable to participate in child care and is free from communicable or contagious disease?
We've always taken a look at what immunizations are in the file. There's times the doctor goes, we're going to hold off on this immunization. We just need documentation of that. We need we need a medical professional saying, this child's on a catch-up schedule, or when this child was in for their physical, they were ill, so we decided not to give this. Just some kind of documentation.
Technically, per our regulations, a child can enroll at a facility and begin receiving care, and they have 60 days from their date of enrollment in order to have the parent provide proof of their immunizations and their health assessment to the facility.
Facilities are also required to conduct a review of where the child is developmentally. We call that a child service report, but there are other forms that we do permit the providers to use. It basically gives the parent a picture of where that child is with regard to social, emotional, physical skills and their strengths and weaknesses and what the parent can work on for at home. That's required to be within the first 6 months of enrollment, and then within every 6 months after that.
They also require injury, illness, like the boo-boo reports or the ouch reports that are provided to the parents. If a child gets sick and it's documented, it should also be in the child's file. Children who have special needs, who may have an IFSP or an IEP, those should be maintained in the child's file as well, so that we can make sure that the facility is monitoring their progress and following those plans. Sometimes we find families who are maybe going through a divorce, who have divorced, or who have shared custody. We would expect to see that legal order in the child's file, directing the facility as to when they can and who they can release a child to in those situations. Usually a good child's file for me that makes it easy to review has all of that paperwork together. And I can open that and instantly see the child's fee agreement, the child's emergency contact form, the child's health assessment, and if the child has been there for at least 6 months, their most recent child service report right away. Those might be the first 4 stacks of paperwork. And then if I'm concerned about maybe some injuries or illnesses that children may have, maybe I may find those a little bit later in the file.
I shouldn't see the agreement form from 5 years ago on top. You need that updated information. A lot of my facilities, the files that I really liked, they would have all of our updated information to the left of the file, and they had that stapled. It was all the updated new information, so I wasn't going through any of the old documents.
I had a checklist for the child's file. That way you can go through and make sure you have everything. You're not having to pull it out of your brain. It's right there.
There's like 3 main papers that they make stress that are the most important. So those are the 3 things that when I come in the door, I tell your parents I need this immediately. You cannot start unless this is all filled out.
For the enrollment packets, we provide both an electronic copy so that you're able to type it in on the computer if that's easier. We also do a hard copy. Some parents like to do it online, some prefer in-person hard copy. So once we get them back, we have an Excel spreadsheet that I go through, and every page is on the Excel spreadsheet. So I'm able to just mark off that it's done, checked off, everything's good, and then whatever isn't turned in, or if there's a paper missing, not signed, I kind of put a red box in the Excel spreadsheet, so then I can make sure that we get it correctly. So I will send home, in the kids' cubbies, we'll put a little note that says, you're missing the health assessment form. And then I'll put the health assessment with it so that they're able to do it. And then I also will send a follow-up email. Sometimes it takes multiple emails. Sometimes it just takes one.
The fee agreements and the emergency contact forms in a child's file are required to be updated every 6 months. And I think that sometimes people forget if they don't have a good system of remembering to update their paperwork.
We basically scan the emergency contact, and we scan the fee agreement, and we have that on our website, so the parents can download it, and it actually helps them because sometimes their information does not change.
I've always given the recommendation, pick 2 times out of the year that you're going to be concentrating on these forms. It's the emergency contact, the agreement, and the child service reports. Do them the same 2 months out of that year so everyone's on the same system. Have those 2 months set out, and even if someone starts a few months before you're doing the updates, have them updated too so they're all on the same schedule. You want everyone on the same schedule.
Every April and every October, we pull all of the files, the emergency contact and the agreements, and we give those originals, and again, I have backups in my office, to the classroom teacher. Because the classroom teachers see the parents. So they will then have the parents update them, get the signatures.
We do it by classrooms. So instead of doing it whole school, which we used to do, we found that that's too overwhelming. We do it by classrooms. We use a remind system. Today we are doing the Forest Friend classroom, and you need to do updates with Dr. Mullen. Please see her this morning at drop off, and we have them set out on a table. And then in maybe each class, you might have 1 or 2 moms or dads that don't drop off. It might be grandparents, neighbor, aunt, or uncle. And then through a phone call, we call them then. We have staff personnel that call them. We're doing file reviews. By this date, you need to see Dr. Mullen to get your file signed.
I try to build up the month before and be like, oh, I think you're due for paperwork. So, Mr. May will be giving you some paperwork to kind of review, or I will try to ask them to come in like 15 minutes earlier to get their child. So we can just look, are you still living at this address? Do you still work here? And, and I'll have, most of the time, I'll have a lot of it filled out for them. So then when it comes to the main information I need, they just can fill it out. Because I've learned that when you let parents take papers home, you never get them back. So I try to do it here.
And then if anything is upcoming due, I will send an alert home. I will verbally send one home, so I send it through our Remind app. And then I also, when I send stuff home to the parents, I will send a big envelope home. That way that kind of alerts them, hey, something important is coming home. And we make everything due within a week when we send it home. That way that gives them a little bit extra fluff time if, they forget, if they lose paperwork. Then we make everything accessible online as well. So if that kind of makes them responsible. If they need to change something, it's there. They're not having to wait for me to print something.
They have to have a new health assessment each time one is due.
The children records are all in a 3-ring binder. I have a checklist on the outside of when their physicals are due, so that it keeps me reminded of, and then I can tell the parent, a month or 2 ahead of time, it's time for your child's physical, and we keep them updated that way. Inside, I also have a checklist of reminding me to update these forms every 6 months, and it keeps it active that way.
We use like little sticky tabs for like health. So we know we can look at the whole file drawer in one glance, and we would know when they're due for health. So now we can just scan our file drawer and know these are our healths coming up that are due in January and February. We do 2-month increments of time. So in December, we're looking for January and February health. And then we give notices to the parents, you're due in January and you're due in February. We do a halfway through the month reminder, and we do an end of the month reminder, that they're due.
I have a spreadsheet on my computer that says when every single child's health assessment is expired. And so if it is, let's say their health assessment is expired in February, I send them a letter in December saying that your health assessment is coming up, your child will need a new one. I give them the form, and then I set reminders in my computer as well.
Contact your rep. Don't wait till we show up and then say, yeah, I was wondering about that, but I wasn't sure. No. Call us, email us, text us. We want to be proactive in setting you up for success. To just make sure everybody's got a system in place to help them.